So let's start with the first issue of the day, which is Atmanirbhar Abhiyaan package. Now, before we discuss the nitty-gritties of the package, let us first understand the term self-reliance, because Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, and many other economists are emphasizing on this word self-reliance. Now, what do we mean by the term self-reliance? Well, India's strategy after independence from 47 till probably, the arrival of Rajiv Gandhi was self-reliance, that we wanted everything to be produced in India and we wanted to minimize the trade. Right, the basic idea was that we don't have to depend on anyone for meeting our basic needs. And therefore the concept of self-reliance came, because what happened in 1950s and 60s was that many countries of Asia and Africa got political independence. They got political independence, but economically, they were still dependent on European powers because their economy was very underdeveloped. Their base of production, or their base of manufacturing was non-existent. Therefore, they had to rely on Europe and US for meeting their basic and strategic needs. And that is how Europe continued to control these countries through the indirect way. Therefore, the leadership in India basically thought that if we want to achieve independence in a true way, in a true extent, then we will have to become economically self-reliant. Because if we will not be economically self-reliant, then our policies will be dictated by people sitting in London, people sitting in Moscow, and people sitting in Washington DC. Therefore, this idea of self-reliant came. But in last 30 years, what we witnessed was that globalization came, Washington Consensus came, and therefore the world became a global village, and every country started depending on the other countries for meeting certain needs. So there was kind of a complementary relationship which developed between the countries. So this modern concept of self-reliant, which Prime Minister Modi is saying, is not really the self-reliance concept of 60s. It's not, because in modern day world, no country can afford to be a self-reliant country. Even North Korea, which we call as the most closed country in the world, even North Korea is not self-reliant. It imports a lot of things from China, from Russia, even from India. So the basic idea of self-reliance, which Prime Minister Modi has propagated, is that for strategic goods, we need to have our own manufacturing base. We don't need to depend on the other countries. Why? Because we have seen in this COVID crisis how India was dependent on API. And API is used for, it gives effect to the medicines. So, and that actually hurted India's capability to actually counter the COVID crisis. Plus we had shortage of masks, sanitizer. So it actually opened the eyes. It opened the eyes of the Indian establishment that for strategic goods, we don't need to rely on anyone. We need to have our own manufacturing base. So here comes the idea of self-reliance based on this ideology. So now let's move to the next part, which is what has been the impact of COVID on India's economy. See, COVID ne kya kiya? Let's understand this to a diagram. What did COVID do? Because of COVID, India's economic growth will fall. Right? Because India's economic growth will fall, therefore the income of people will fall. everything is connected to each other. When the income of people will fall, then they will consume less. Because if we talk of GDP is based on 4 parameters. These 4 are the tires. These 4 sectors or 4 components are the tires on which the economy runs. And these tires are C plus I plus G plus X minus N. Consumption, investment, government and net exports. So when income of the people will fall, then the consumption among the people will fall, because naturally if they will not earn more, they will consume less. Right? If your job is lost, you will consume less. Right? So C will fall. Also, if people will consume less, then the producers, they will invest less. Why would they open a new factory when they see that there is lack of demand? Why they will open a new factory when they see people are not consuming enough? Right? So investment was already falling from last many years, because as you know that our manufacturers are over leveraged. They have taken so much debt that they have become risk averse and they don't have the appetite to do further investment. So I will also fall. Then we move to the next part, which is G, government expenditure. Now, when manufacturers will not produce more, when consumers will not consume more, then naturally government's revenue will also fall, right? Because when the corporate sector will register less profits, then definitely it will pay less taxes to the government. So tax of the government depends on the economic activity. So even CG will be negative. And last is exports. Well, at a time when countries are not, supply chains are breaking, countries are not trading with each other, natural si baat hai, exports will also fall. So overall, the impact on economy of COVID will be disastrous if government doesn't take any immediate steps. And therefore government came and government said that, look, we know that economy is facing a downturn, we know people are facing the problem, therefore we will release our fiscal stimulus, or we will release our economic package to revive, to boost the economy. So let us understand now the government package through the use of diagrams. So let us understand the package through a diagram, through a very good infographic. So this package has 5 tranches. It means that 5 days or repeatedly 5 times finance minister came out, and first day she gave some benefit to particular sector, next day she gave benefit to another sector, third day to another, and fourth day to another. So the first part of this tranche deals with the MSME sector, and that we have discussed in detail in the last lecture, that 3 lakh crore of guarantee loan has been given, which means that government takes the guarantee that if you don't repay the loan, we will repay for you. Plus it has also came out with subordinate debt, and these are introduced for those MSME who don't have a good credit record and have already taken a lot of loan before the COVID crisis. So for them, government said that we will do partial credit guarantee, that if you have taken loan of 1 crore rupees, probably 20 lakh rupees we will repay for you, rest you will have to repay. Along with that, there was a 90,000 liquidity injection for the discoms, and these we will discuss in a separate topic in more detailed manner. 9,000 for them. Then for the NBFC, government came out with some liquidity infusion, because NBFC are also facing a lot of crisis. In the second tranche, government focused on the KISA, on ensuring that the farmers, or ensuring that the farmers and the migrant workers get their due, because as you have seen, migrant workers are in dismal condition and they are unable to get access to food. So for them, government released this one nation, one ration card scheme. This we have also discussed in the previous lecture, that wherever you live, no problem, you can get access to the subsidized grain from the nearest PDS shop, using Aadhaar, using the biometric technique. Next is the farmers. The farmers were given, or the farmers will be given loans through Kisan credit card. What is a Kisan credit card? Kisan credit card is actually, it's allowed to the farmers, and farmers can take short-term loans to meet their working capital needs through using the Kisan credit card. So in Kisan credit card, 2 lakh crore has been given to that. Plus it has been announced that the farmers will be given loan at a concessional rate. Third is the street vendors. As you know that because of social distancing, because of complete lockdown, आपने अपने मोहल्लों में देखा होगा कि जो रेरी वाले थे, पान शॉप वाले थे, छोला कुलचा वाले थे, all these people, they had to shut down their shops, and they live in a very short margin. They can't, it's not feasible for them to stop their production for 1 month or to stop selling their goods for 1 month. So for these street vendors who are doing these micro businesses, government has announced a package of 5,000 crore under which each of the street vendors will be given 10,000 rupees of loan. So this will cover some 50 lakh people. Next we have is the third franchise, which deals with the fisheries sector, fisheries and agri infrastructure. So fisheries sector ke liye there has been a new scheme launched, which is Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. We will discuss about the scheme in a detailed way, again in a separate topic. Also, for boosting agriculture infrastructure, 1 lakh crore rupees has been given, and this 1 lakh crore rupees will be used in doing the in improving the cold chain infrastructure, in improving the storage facilities, in improving the rural roads, etc., etc. Now the fourth and the fifth tranche was given for Manrega. Manrega is 40,000 crore rupees has been given. In the budget this year, 61,000 was given, and in addition to that 40,000 additional amount is given. So total almost 1 lakh crore has been now given to Manrega. Plus government announced its intention to liberalize certain sector, for example defense. It also it also said that there will be a new public sector enterprise policy under which government PSU will only deal with the strategic sectors. The rest of the sectors, government will go for the disinvestment route. Also regarding coal, government has said that now there will be a competition in coal. So all these things are announced by the government to give the boost. Right, in detail, the things will be provided in the PDF, so you can go through the PDF. PDF contains the allocation to particular sector in a more detailed manner, but these are factual stuff, and I won't be discussing more of the factual stuff. I will mostly be discussing more of the analysis stuff. So why was this approach adopted by or what is the approach which the government adopted? So government का क्या था? Government thought that there will be a supply side push. There will be a supply side push, and government thought that because we have a limited fiscal space, because as you know that government's fiscal deficit is already high. So government believed that because we have less fiscal space, therefore rather than going for direct cash transfer, which was propagated by Raghuram Rajan and many other economists, government thought that if we can restart the production, the economy will be revived. So what was the idea behind this Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme? So if you see this diagram, well, this is what the government intention was. Government thought that if we will provide liquidity support to the business, usse kya hoga? Liquidity support to the business would mean that the business will restart, because as I have discussed in the last lecture also, ki business, even if the government is now going for unlocking things, government now said that we will unlock India, but to unlock India you will have to start production, and to start production the manufacturer, the producer has to pay salary to the workers, it has to pay money to buy raw materials, so it needs money for that. Government's intention was that, see, we will provide you the loan for that. You use the loan, restart the production. Once the production will be restarted, you will again start employing people. Once the employment will increase, people will have the income. When people will have the income, people will consume, and there will be more investment and economy will be revived. So this is the basic idea behind the Atmanirbhar Bharat package. Now, what has been the significance of what has been the significance of this self-reliance concept? Let us understand in today's concept, or let us understand in today's context. So see, what happens is that, as you know, that global supply chain has been restricted, right? Global supply chain क्या होती है? I have discussed it many times कि भाई एक अगर shirt, if one shirt is being made, the current production concept जो अभी चल रहा है, it's something like this कि the cloth will be made in Bangladesh. It's just an example. The chain will be made in Senegal. The zip may be, or the buttons will be made in Vietnam. The branding will be done in Singapore. And finally, this shirt will be sold in US. So this is the concept of global supply chain in layman language. Now, what has happened is that because of COVID, this global supply chain will break down because there is restriction in the flow of goods, there is restriction in the flow of labor. So they will be so all these global supply chain will be broken. And because this global supply chain will be broken, because they will be broken, therefore India will not be able to depend on imports. India will not be able to depend on imports for meeting its strategic needs. What are India's strategic needs? We don't have enough API production, which is used for making medicines. We don't have enough oil with us, so we depend on the Gulf. We don't have enough gold. We don't have many semiconductors which is required for our electronics industries. So we don't have these things. And till now we were depending mostly on imports. But now that global supply chain has been broken, we cannot do that. We cannot do that again. We cannot rely on that. So we will have to develop our own manufacturing base. And that is the basic intention. That is the basic intention behind this project. So idea will be that once we will give boost to our local industries, these local industries will become global in some time. For example, let's take the example of Tata, Mahindra. Tata and Mahindra trucks are now everywhere. I've seen Mahindra cars in small places like Philippines also. So some of Indian brands have already become global. The idea is to make more Indian brands global in next 5-10 years. So what is the positive of this package? Well, there are certain positives of this package. First positive is increase allocation to Manrega. Usse kya hoga? The migrants who are reaching back home, they will be provided with some productive employment, right? Second is the demand of states for higher borrowing. As you know that states are at the forefront. States are at the forefront in countering COVID crisis. They are the front line, workers, and therefore they need more money, and for that they will need to borrow more, and therefore government allowed, or the central government allowed them to borrow more. Third is government has also used this opportunity to unleash some certain reforms in many sectors, for example, agriculture marketing, for example, contract farming, defense, etc. So, what has been the criticism of this package? Well, it has been criticized in a great way by many economists. Let us look into some of the basic criticisms. So, the first way is old demands met with conditions. So, see, normally these reforms, they should have been part of the government's economic agenda from last many years. Many people are asking why has the crisis finally forced the government to take these reforms, because these reforms should have been taken by the government long back. I mean, these are the demands of the industries, and there is nothing unusual about it, because many countries in the world have given a similar kind of reforms. Next is the bluff with MSME. So, government, what they did was that rather than giving them direct money, government is giving them through loans. A problem here है कि these MSME, they are already over leveraged, right? They are already over leveraged, and since they are already over leveraged, then how will they repay the loan? And whether, I mean, they don't have the appetite to repay the loan, they don't have the capability to repay the loan, because we don't see that market demand will revive in short period. So therefore, there is a problem. There is a problem that rather than giving them direct funding, you have given them funding through indirect route, and which they are not capable of repaying. So that is the problem. Third is no stakeholders consulted. You didn't consult the opposition, you didn't consult the top economists, you didn't consult the banks, you didn't consult the MSME. That is the problem. I mean, being a democracy, you have to consult with the people. You have to consult with the wider audience, right? Next is job losses were unaddressed. So as you know, I was reading one report yesterday which said that 45 crore jobs have been lost in the post-COVID era in India. And majority of these job losses are, the middle class. The middle class की काफी job गई है. And also people working in the formal sector. And government has done nothing, or government has announced nothing in this package to ensure that they are not fired from the job. Because yesterday I was reading the report that India Bulls has fired 9,000 employees through WhatsApp calls. It is not the right way to do. Government is doing nothing to protect these people, right? Because ultimately these salaried middle class are the main consumers, right? And with them losing their jobs, the whole idea of economic revival will collapse. Because once you have this big section, because as you know, India has 400 million people who could be called as middle class. If these 400 million people, and they are the main engine behind the revival of demand, right? Agar inki naukriyan gayi, if they lose their job, then it will be very, very, very difficult for economy to revive. Farmers' plight ignored. Again, direct cash transfer was being expected by many people. Plus, they are still waiting for the MSP. Government hasn't done anything to announce the MSP and all. So they are not really satisfied. The farmers' body is also not satisfied. Migrant workers, you haven't paid them anything. आपने सिर्फ बोला कि वो जाएंगे अपने घर, मनरेगा उनको मिल जाएगा, मनरेगा में उनको जॉब मिल जाएंगे, that will be done. But you have not given a special package where you would be giving some kind of direct benefit transfer, some kind of cash transfer, some kind of food transfer to them. That was expected by many economists, but that has not happened. Also, healthcare पे कोई खास focus नहीं गया है. Government didn't announce any great reform for the healthcare package. Then there was undue pressure on banks, because ultimately government ने क्या बोला है? Government has said that those MSMEs who have a bad credit history, government will only give or government with partial credit guarantee, which means only some part government will pay, rest these MSMEs have to pay. And government has told the banks that you have to give 20,000 crores of loan to these people, to these MSME. Now banks ki already halat kharab hai, they are already facing the NPA problem, and by this it will further increase because they will have to lend this much amount to these MSMEs, and government will only repay some of them. Rest, if MSME will be able to repay, that's good, but if they not be able to repay, then these banks will lose their money. Next is, and the most important, it ignored the demand stimulus. Let us understand this. See, when we were discussing this fiscal stimulus thing, there were two viewpoints of the economists. One was that we should go for supply side measures. Second was we should go for demand side measures or demand side stimulus. तो देखो क्या था कि गवर्नमेंट ने जितने भी स्टेप्स लिए हैं, the steps that have been taken by the government, all of them addresses the supply side need. All of them addresses the supply side need कि भाई you will give a loan to the producers and the producers will use that loan to restart their production and the economy will be revived. But government missed one very important thing, that who will buy that goods? Who will buy that produce? If people will not have income, who will buy that? Right? So that is what many experts say is demand side stimulus government should have focused on, which is government should have given money, direct cash transfer to the poor people in India. Also, government should have reduced the GST, the income tax. That would have meant that there would have been more disposable income in the hands of the people, and this income then they would have used to spend more, and then that spending would have meant that the demands for these produce which have been produced by these industries, demand वहां से मिल जाती, ठीक है, and then उस demand से क्या होता कि it would have led to the further production. So demand side stimulus, many people were saying that we should have gone for that. Rather, government only went for supply side stimulus, which as you all know has its limitations. So what needs to be done? What needs to be done immediately and what needs to be done in long run? Let us understand this. So immediately what needs to be done? One, food and cash transfer. This we have been discussing in last few lectures also, that we need to, and we have also discussed that how feasible it is for the government to actually go for this, that they need to give cash and food to the poor people, especially the migrant people. Second, revamp the Manrega work that we have discussed in the last lecture, which is that Manrega should be linked to the town and village industries. Last lecture we have discussed now that in rural, like China, in rural India, we should develop small scale enterprises which needs to be managed by the panchayats, and the migrants who are going back to that village, they need to be employed in that rural enterprises, rural factories, and their salaries had to be paid from their salaries should be paid from the Manrega money. This way they will be able to they will get employment, plus the rural industries will also be strengthened. So this model was adopted by China in 80s, and that is how China reduced its poverty to half in 5 years. Third is urban focus. So what we need is something similar to Manrega for urban areas. Right to work, guaranteed right to work, and this will be managed by the urban local bodies. Fourthly, we need to focus on developing care economy. There are so many people who are sick. Right now you have these auxiliary midwife nurses and the ASHA workers catering them. They hardly get any money. They hardly get any respect. So we need to mobilize the educated people to actually, work on the care economy, health sector, education sector, taking care of the old. Next is increasing revenue. So increasing revenue की अगर हम बात करें तो government needs to have a revenue for this, right, to finance all these expenditure. So there should be wealth tax should be doubled. Also there should be a inheritance tax. So if somebody inherited the property of its fathers, for example 100 crores, directly 33 crores should be used as tax and they should be debited to the government. This will generate enough money for the government to finance all these expenditure. Now in the long run, in order to achieve self-reliance, we need to go for we need to undertake following steps. One, we need to focus on R&D. R&D is something which we need to focus on, because without that we cannot become self-reliant. US, China, Japan, all of them become industrial power because they focused on R&D. So we need to also focus on the R&D. At least the investment on education should be raised to 6%. Education and skill development, it should be increased to 6%. Plus we need to go for state funding of R&D, because private sector जो R&D करता है वो फिर क्या करता है, once it develops a new product, it applies for a patent, which means other people cannot use that technology for 10-15 years, and that hurts the knowledge economy. So rather than private sector focusing on R&D, the R&D should be supported by the government, and government should directly talk to them that you develop this product, we are giving you all kind of funding, but you cannot apply for patents. The product or the knowledge which will be developed will be shared widely with the people, right? Third is we need to focus on new areas like electric vehicle, artificial intelligence, photovoltaics, UAV, biotechnology, etc. These are emerging sectors, so we need to focus on that. And lastly, we need to promote the industry whatever is being taught in these vocational schools. It needs to be, whatever is being taught in these vocational schools, the industry need to involve closely in that. The industry need to develop or oversee the curriculum, so that we can ensure that whatever is being taught in vocational schools is relevant to the requirements of the industry. And lastly, we need to boost our health sector, and we have already spoken a lot on this. So this is all about the Atmanirbhar package. This is all about the Atmanirbhar package. I hope everything is clear.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Sajal's Daily.